Andrew Myers, a quiet elderly man with a calm and unassuming demeanor, stepped into a bustling car dealership on a chilly afternoon. His old sedan, while reliable, was nearly a decade old, and he decided it was time for an upgrade. Clad in a worn-out coat and scuffed shoes, Andrew looked entirely out of place amidst the sleek interiors and the well-dressed clientele. But he wasn't there to impress anyone, he was simply looking for a car that would meet his needs. As Andrew wandered through the dealership, admiring the gleaming vehicles on display, the reaction from the staff was far from welcoming. Despite his evident interest, no one approached him to offer assistance. Instead, the salespeople busied themselves with younger, flashier customers who looked like they could afford the dealership's luxury models. Andrew's modest appearance seemed to act as an invisibility cloak, rendering him almost non-existent in the eyes of the staff. One of the salesmen, Garrett Blake, a young man with slick back hair and a self-assured smirk, briefly made eye contact with Andrew. But just as quickly, he turned his attention to a well-dressed couple who had entered moments later. The whispers among the staff, the dismissive glances, and the palpable indifference were impossible to ignore. Andrew waited patiently by a shiny black sedan that had caught his eye, running his hand along its polished surface and imagining himself behind the wheel. After nearly 20 minutes of being ignored, Andrew decided to take matters into his own hands. He approached the main desk, where 3 salesmen stood chatting animatedly. "Excuse me," he said politely, his voice steady despite the growing frustration in his chest. "I'm interested in purchasing one of your vehicles. Could someone assist me?" Garrett barely glanced up from his phone. "We're a bit busy at the moment," he replied dismissively. "Why don't you come back later?" Andrew's expression remained calm, but inside, a storm was brewing. He nodded curtly and turned to leave, his heart heavy with disappointment and anger. As he walked out, he heard one of the salesmen mutter under his breath, followed by a faint chuckle, "Wasting time on window shoppers." The voice sneered, but little did they know, Andrew Myers was far from an ordinary man. He had spent decades building a fortune through smart investments and business acumen, yet he chose to live simply, valuing character over material possessions. The humiliation he felt that day would not be easily forgotten, and as he drove away in his old car, a plan began to take shape in his mind. That evening, Andrew made a few phone calls to his influential contacts in the business world. By the next morning, he had orchestrated a move that would not only change his life but also turn the dealership upside down. The following morning, Andrew Myers arrived at the dealership once more. This time, he wasn't there as a customer. After a series of strategic negotiations and phone calls the night before, Andrew had secured the necessary funds and agreements to acquire the entire car dealership. As he stepped through the glass doors, the same staff who had ignored him the day before were present, completely unaware of the seismic shift that had occurred overnight. Andrew was dressed the same, his modest coat and worn shoes didn't hint at the magnitude of the change. He walked in with the same quiet confidence, but this time, there was a spark of determination in his eyes. The dealership's general manager, a middle-aged man named Thomas Green, noticed Andrew immediately. Unaware of who he was or why he had returned, Thomas put on a forced smile and approached him. "Good morning, sir," Thomas said, his tone polite but insincere. "How can we assist you today?" Andrew reached into his coat pocket and retrieved a neatly folded set of documents. Without a word, he handed them to Thomas, watching his reaction closely. Thomas's brows furrowed as he unfolded the papers and began to read. His face gradually turned pale, his confident smile fading into an expression of disbelief and panic. What is this?" Thomas stammered, his voice unsteady. Andrew finally broke his silence. "I'm not here to buy a car," he said calmly, his gaze unwavering. "I'm here as your new boss." The room fell silent as the weight of Andrew's words sank in. The once dismissive staff began to notice the interaction, their curiosity piqued. Whispered conversations broke out among them as they tried to piece together what was happening. Thomas, still holding the papers with trembling hands, looked up at Andrew with wide eyes. This can't be right," Thomas muttered. "You bought the dealership?" "That's correct," Andrew replied, his tone firm but composed. "As of this morning, I own this operation, and I'm here to make some changes." The staff exchanged nervous glances. Those who had laughed at Andrew the previous day now looked visibly uncomfortable. Garrett Blake, the slick-haired salesman who had dismissed Andrew so callously, shifted uneasily in his spot, his smirk replaced with a look of dread. Andrew turned to address the entire room, his voice, though measured, carrying a quiet authority that demanded attention. "Yesterday, I came here as a customer," he began. "I was looking to buy a car, but instead of being treated with respect, I was ignored, dismissed, and judged based solely on my appearance. You assumed I wasn't worth your time. You made a mistake." The tension in the room was palpable. No one dared to interrupt as Andrew continued. "As of today, things are going to change. This dealership will no longer tolerate arrogance or discrimination of any kind. Every customer who walks through those doors will be treated with respect, regardless of how they look or what you think they can afford." He turned back to Thomas. "And that starts with leadership. Thomas, you're fired." Thomas's jaw dropped. "Fired?" he echoed incredulously. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Andrew replied, his voice unwavering. "Your leadership has fostered a toxic culture here, and that ends now." The silence that followed was deafening. One by one, Andrew began addressing the other staff members, calling out those who had displayed the same dismissive behavior he experienced. Garrett was among the first names on the list. "Garrett Blake," Andrew said, his gaze locking onto the young salesman. Garrett froze, unable to meet Andrew's eyes. "You showed me exactly the kind of attitude this dealership will no longer tolerate. Pack your things." Garrett opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He knew there was no use arguing. With his head down, he walked toward the back office to gather his belongings. As Garrett shuffled away, Andrew continued his appraisal of the staff. Those who had sneered or whispered about him the day before were either dismissed or warned that their behavior needed to change immediately. Andrew wasn't just firing people for the sake of revenge, he was building a team that reflected the values he held dear: respect, humility, and kindness. Among the group, one employee stood out, a young woman named Laura Bennett. Unlike her colleagues, Laura had discreetly greeted Andrew the previous day and even offered a warm smile. Though she hadn't been assigned to sales, Andrew remembered her small act of kindness and saw potential in her. "Laura Bennett," Andrew called out, and she stepped forward nervously. "You're one of the few people here who treated me with even a shred of decency. Starting today, you'll be the new floor manager. I trust you'll lead with fairness and respect." Laura's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But I've only been here 6 months," she stammered. "I'm not interested in seniority," Andrew replied. "I'm interested in people who treat others the right way." "Congratulations, Laura." The remaining staff, now visibly shaken, began to realize that Andrew wasn't there to simply punish, he was there to rebuild. He addressed the room once more, his voice calm but resolute. "This dealership will no longer operate as it has in the past," he declared. "I want each of you to understand that every customer matters. Whether they're dressed in a 3-piece suit or an old coat like mine, they deserve your full attention and respect. If you can't uphold those values, there's no place for you here." By the end of the day, nearly half the staff had been dismissed. Those who remained were given clear instructions on how the dealership would operate moving forward. Andrew wasted no time hiring replacements, prioritizing individuals who shared his vision for a respectful and inclusive workplace. The transformation of the dealership was swift. Word spread quickly about the dramatic events and the new ownership. Customers began to notice the difference almost immediately. Where arrogance and indifference had once prevailed, a welcoming and professional atmosphere now thrived. Within weeks, sales soared, and the dealership's reputation skyrocketed. People from all over the city came not just to buy cars but to experience the exceptional service that had become the dealership's hallmark. Andrew, however, remained as modest as ever. He didn't bask in the attention or take credit for the turnaround. For him, it wasn't about proving a point to the staff who had dismissed him. It was about creating something meaningful, a place where people felt valued. One afternoon, as Andrew walked through the showroom, now bustling with activity, Laura approached him. "Mr. Myers," she began hesitantly, "I just wanted to thank you for believing in me and giving me this opportunity." Andrew smiled warmly. You earned it, Laura. All I did was recognize what was already there. Just remember to keep treating people the way you always have, with respect. That's what truly matters. Laura nodded, her confidence growing with each passing day. Under her leadership and Andrew's guidance, the dealership flourished. As Andrew prepared to leave the showroom, he took one last look around. The same space that had once been filled with indifference and condescension was now alive with positivity and purpose. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not from the power he now wielded, but from the change he had brought about. This experience had been a profound reminder for Andrew. True wealth wasn't about money or possessions, it was about how you treated others and the impact you made on the world. The dealership now stood as a testament to this philosophy, reflecting Andrew's values in every interaction, every decision, and every sale. Customers, too, began to share their stories of how the dealership had changed for the better. A single mother who had once been brushed off because she didn't appear to fit the luxury image was now welcomed warmly and treated with the utmost respect. A retired teacher who had saved for years to buy his dream car left the dealership smiling, grateful not just for his new vehicle but for the way he was treated. Andrew made a habit of walking through the dealership at least once a week, greeting customers and chatting with employees. He wanted to ensure that the new culture he had instilled remained intact. His presence served as a reminder that respect and humility weren't just corporate values, they were personal ones. The transformation extended beyond the dealership walls. Local businesses and organizations took notice of the remarkable turnaround and began seeking Andrew's advice on how to cultivate a similar culture in their own establishments. Andrew, never one to shy away from an opportunity to make a positive impact, gladly shared his insights, emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in all interactions. The staff at the dealership, once a fragmented group, had become a cohesive team. They took pride in their work, not just because of the increase in sales but because they genuinely enjoyed coming to work in a supportive and inclusive environment. The new hires brought fresh perspectives and enthusiasm, further enriching the dealership's atmosphere. Laura, now flourishing in her role as floor manager, became a beacon of Andrew's philosophy. She led with kindness, ensuring that every customer and employee felt valued. Her dedication and hard work didn't go unnoticed, and soon she became a role model for others in the industry. People often sought her out for advice, eager to learn from someone who had risen through the ranks with integrity and perseverance. The dealership's success story even caught the attention of the local media. Reporters came to interview Andrew, curious about the man behind the dramatic turnaround. Despite the accolades and attention, Andrew remained humble. When asked about his journey, he simply replied, "It's not about me. It's about the people here, the ones who believed in change and made it happen. They're the real heroes of this story." One day, a familiar figure walked into the dealership. Garrett Blake, the former slick-haired salesman, entered with a hesitant demeanor. His once confident smirk was replaced by a look of contrition. He approached Andrew, who was speaking with a customer at the time, and waited patiently for him to finish. When Andrew finally turned to face him, Garrett extended his hand. "Mr. Myers, I owe you an apology," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I was arrogant, dismissive, and completely out of line. Losing my job here was a wake-up call, and I've spent the past few months reflecting on my behavior. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Andrew studied Garrett for a moment before shaking his hand. "Apologies are a good start, Garrett," he said. "But what matters is what you do next. I hope you've learned from this experience." "I have," Garrett assured him. "And if there's ever a chance, I'd like to prove it. I'd like to work here again, under the new leadership." Andrew considered Garrett's words carefully. While he believed in second chances, he also understood the importance of trust and accountability. "I'll think about it, Garrett," he finally said. "For now, focus on continuing to grow and learn. If the time is right, we'll talk again." The encounter with Garrett served as a reminder to Andrew that change wasn't just about creating a better environment for customers and employees, it was also about giving people the opportunity to grow and redeem themselves. As the dealership continued to thrive, Andrew reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What had started as a simple trip to buy a car had turned into a mission to create something meaningful. He had transformed not just a business but the lives of countless individuals who crossed its doors. Years later, Andrew decided it was time to step back and let others take the reins. He handed over the dealership to Laura, confident in her ability to carry forward the values they had worked so hard to establish. Under her leadership, the dealership continued to flourish, becoming a model of excellence in the industry. Andrew spent his retirement traveling, volunteering, and mentoring young entrepreneurs. But no matter where life took him, he always carried with him the lessons he had learned: the power of humility, the importance of treating others with respect, and the enduring value of kindness. The dealership remained a shining example of these principles, a place where anyone, regardless of their background or appearance, could walk in and feel valued. And for Andrew Myers, that was the greatest legacy of all. Andrew Myers' story became more than just a local tale, it turned into a source of inspiration for countless people. Business schools began using it as a case study on ethical leadership and the impact of humility in transforming toxic workplace cultures. Articles were written about his remarkable journey, focusing on the values he had instilled and how they had created not just a successful dealership, but a beacon of respect and decency in the community. Laura, now fully at the helm of the dealership, carried forward Andrew's vision with remarkable energy and dedication. Under her leadership, the business expanded, opening new branches in neighboring towns. Each new location was run with the same principles of respect, fairness, and inclusivity that had been established at the original dealership. Customers flocked to these branches, knowing they would be treated with kindness and dignity. The ripple effects of Andrew's actions extended far beyond the dealership. Local businesses, inspired by his example, began adopting similar practices, creating a shift in how commerce was conducted in the area. Communities grew stronger as businesses prioritized people over profits, fostering trust and goodwill among their customers and employees alike. Meanwhile, Andrew found joy in his retirement, spending time mentoring aspiring leaders who shared his passion for ethical business practices. He often spoke at community events and business forums, sharing his story and emphasizing the importance of integrity in every endeavor. Leadership, Andrew often said, isn't about power or authority. It's about service. It's about lifting others up and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. One day, Andrew received an invitation to attend a special event at the dealership. Laura had planned a surprise to honor him and his contributions. When Andrew arrived, he was greeted by a crowd of smiling faces: employees, customers, and members of the community who had been touched by his kindness and wisdom. The showroom had been transformed for the occasion, adorned with photographs and memorabilia from Andrew's journey. A banner hung above the stage, reading, "Thank you, Andrew Myers, a legacy of respect and kindness." Laura stepped forward to address the crowd. "Today, we celebrate a man who showed us what it means to lead with heart," she began. "Andrew didn't just change this dealership, he changed lives. He taught us that every person matters, and he reminded us of the power of humility and compassion. For that, we are forever grateful." The crowd erupted into applause as Laura presented Andrew with a plaque commemorating his legacy. Overwhelmed by the gesture, Andrew stepped onto the stage, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I'm deeply touched," he said, his voice steady yet filled with warmth. "But this isn't about me, it's about all of you. Each one of you has played a role in making this dealership what it is today. Together, we've proven that kindness and respect can build something extraordinary. My hope is that this legacy continues to grow, inspiring others to create change in their own lives and communities." The event concluded with a sense of unity and shared purpose, a testament to the enduring impact of Andrew's vision. As he mingled with the crowd, sharing stories and laughter, Andrew felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had set out to buy a car, but he had gained so much more: a community that embodied the values he held dear. In the years that followed, Andrew's story continued to inspire. The dealership flourished under Laura's leadership, setting new standards for excellence in customer service and employee satisfaction. Other businesses followed suit, creating a wave of positive change that extended far beyond the local area. Andrew's name became synonymous with ethical leadership and the transformative power of humility. His story was shared across generations, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness and integrity could leave a lasting impact. As Andrew reflected on his journey, he often marveled at how one seemingly ordinary day had set everything in motion. It was a testament to the idea that opportunities for change could arise when least expected, and that with the right mindset, even the most challenging experiences could be turned into something extraordinary. Andrew Myers had lived a life guided by principles of respect, humility, and compassion. In doing so, he had not only transformed a dealership but had also left an indelible mark on the hearts of everyone who knew him. For Andrew, that was the greatest success of all. As the dealership and its story grew more renowned, the influence of Andrew Myers' philosophy extended far beyond the immediate community. Business owners and managers from across the country sought to understand how one man's principles had led to such remarkable transformation. Laura began receiving invitations to speak at industry events, sharing her experience and lessons learned under Andrew's mentorship. In one such event, Laura stood before a packed auditorium filled with business leaders and aspiring entrepreneurs. "What Andrew Myers taught us," she began, "is that success is not just measured in numbers but in the lives we touch. Treating people with respect and valuing their dignity creates loyalty and trust, things no amount of marketing can buy." Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Many approached her afterward, eager to implement similar changes in their own organizations. The ripple effect of Andrew's actions was growing, spreading the values of empathy and fairness to countless workplaces. Andrew, now in his later years, continued to watch these developments with quiet pride. Though he remained out of the spotlight, he occasionally received letters and messages from people whose lives had been changed by his story. Teachers wrote about how they used his example to teach their students about kindness and leadership. Small business owners shared how adopting his principles had turned their struggling companies into thriving ventures. Despite his growing legacy, Andrew stayed true to his humble roots. He continued to live simply, volunteering at local shelters and spending time mentoring young people. One of his favorite activities was visiting schools to talk to students about the importance of integrity and hard work. During one such visit, a student asked him, "Mr. Myers, what's the most important lesson you've learned in life?" Andrew paused for a moment, then replied, "The most important lesson I've learned is that everyone has value, no matter how they look, where they come from, or what they've been through. If you treat people with respect and kindness, you not only uplift them, you uplift yourself." His words were met with applause, and the students left inspired, many of them determined to carry his message forward in their own lives. Back at the dealership, Laura and her team continued to innovate, finding new ways to connect with customers and improve their services. They implemented community outreach programs, offering free workshops on car maintenance and partnering with local schools to provide internships for students interested in automotive careers. These efforts further strengthened the bond between the dealership and the community, reinforcing the values Andrew had instilled. One day, a surprising opportunity arose. A major automotive corporation, impressed by the dealership's success and reputation, approached Laura with a proposal to acquire the business. The offer was generous, and it included a commitment to maintaining the dealership's culture and values. Laura consulted with Andrew about the decision. True to his nature, he listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions before offering his advice. "If they're willing to honor what we've built here," he said, "then this could be an opportunity to expand our impact even further. But only if you're confident they'll stay true to the values we hold dear." After thorough discussions and negotiations, Laura agreed to the deal. The corporation took over operations, but with Laura at the helm and Andrew's legacy as the guiding principle, the dealership continued to thrive. The partnership allowed for new resources and opportunities, enabling the dealership's philosophy to reach a broader audience. For Andrew, the transition marked a poignant moment. He had always believed in building something meaningful and lasting, and now, the values he had championed were poised to influence countless other dealerships and businesses. In the years that followed, the dealership became a model for ethical business practices on a national scale. Workshops and training programs were developed based on its principles, helping organizations of all sizes embrace the power of respect and kindness in their operations. Andrew, now in the twilight of his life, often reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What had started as a day of humiliation and disappointment had turned into a movement that touched lives far and wide. It was a testament to the idea that even the smallest actions, rooted in integrity, could create waves of change. Surrounded by friends, family, and a community that cherished him, Andrew spent his final years in peace and contentment. When he passed away, tributes poured in from all over the world. His life was celebrated not just for his achievements but for the values he had embodied, values that continued to inspire generations. A plaque was placed at the entrance of the original dealership, now a thriving hub of activity and positivity. It read, "In honor of Andrew Myers, a man who showed us the power of humility, respect, and kindness. His legacy lives on in the lives he touched and the values he upheld." And so, Andrew's story became immortal, a shining example of how one person's unwavering commitment to doing the right thing could transform not just a business but an entire community. And beyond, years after Andrew Myers' passing, his legacy continued to flourish in ways even he might not have imagined. The dealership, now part of a nationwide network, stood as a beacon of ethical business practices. Its reputation as a place where respect and kindness were non-negotiable drew both customers and employees from far and wide. It became known not just as a successful business but as a symbol of what could be achieved when values were placed at the heart of an organization. Laura, still at the forefront of the dealership's operations, worked tirelessly to ensure that Andrew's vision remained intact. She frequently spoke at conferences, sharing how a culture of respect had been the foundation of their success. Under her guidance, the dealership expanded its community outreach programs, funding scholarships for underprivileged students and sponsoring local events that brought people together. One of the most impactful initiatives was the Andrew Myers Leadership Program, launched in partnership with local schools and colleges. The program provided mentorship, internships, and scholarships to young people interested in ethical leadership and entrepreneurship. Thousands of students participated each year, learning about Andrew's story and applying his principles to their own ambitions. For many participants, the program was life-changing. One young woman, Jasmine, came from a struggling family and had almost given up on her dream of owning a business. Through the leadership program, she not only gained the skills and knowledge she needed but also found a network of mentors who believed in her. Years later, Jasmine opened her own successful company, crediting the program and Andrew's story as her inspiration. "Andrew Myers taught me that success isn't about how much you have," Jasmine said at an event honoring his legacy. "It's about how much you give and how you make others feel. His story gave me hope when I needed it the most, and I'll carry his values with me forever." The dealership also became a hub for other businesses to learn and grow. Quarterly workshops were held to teach business owners how to create inclusive, respectful environments for their customers and employees. These workshops often featured testimonials from former staff and customers, sharing first-hand accounts of how Andrew's approach had transformed not just the dealership but their lives. One particularly moving story came from an employee who had worked at the dealership during its early transformation. Initially skeptical of Andrew's vision, he had resisted the changes and even considered leaving. But over time, he saw how the new culture brought out the best in everyone, including himself. "Andrew didn't just change the dealership," the employee said. "He changed me. He taught me to see people differently, to listen more, and to lead with empathy. Those lessons have made me a better person, not just a better employee." As time passed, the dealership celebrated numerous milestones, each one a reminder of how far they had come. On the 25th anniversary of Andrew's acquisition of the dealership, a special event was held to honor his memory. People from all over the country attended, including former customers, employees, and even some of the staff who had initially dismissed Andrew all those years ago. Garrett Blake, the slick-haired salesman who had once been fired for his dismissive attitude, stood on stage to share his journey. After leaving the dealership, Garrett had spent years working to better himself, driven by the lesson Andrew had taught him. He had since become a successful businessman and an advocate for ethical practices in his industry. "Andrew Myers gave me a second chance," Garrett said, his voice filled with emotion. "Not directly, but through the lessons he left behind. He showed me what true leadership looks like, and I've tried to live up to that ever since. I wouldn't be the man I am today without him." The event concluded with a touching tribute, a video montage of Andrew's life, narrated by Laura. It highlighted not just his achievements but the values he lived by: humility, kindness, and an unwavering belief in the potential for good in every person. As the video ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Beyond the dealership, Andrew's story continued to inspire people in all walks of life. His name became synonymous with ethical leadership, and his principles were taught in classrooms, discussed in boardrooms, and celebrated in communities. For those who knew him, he wasn't just a successful businessman, he was a reminder of what it meant to live with integrity. In the original dealership showroom, a corner was dedicated to Andrew's memory. Alongside the plaque honoring his contributions, a quote from him was inscribed on the wall. "True success isn't measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by the difference you make in the lives of others." That simple but profound statement became the mantra not just for the dealership but for everyone who had been touched by Andrew's story. It was a reminder that greatness wasn't about wealth or status, it was about how you treated others and the legacy of kindness you left behind. Andrew Meyer's life may have started with humble beginnings, but his story became one of extraordinary impact. Through his actions, he proved that even the smallest moments, like a visit to a car dealership, could spark profound change. And in doing so, he left a legacy that would endure for generations, touching hearts and changing lives long after he was gone. Years passed, and the legacy of Andrew Meyers grew even stronger. His story became the subject of books, documentaries, and motivational speeches. Business schools around the world added case studies of his leadership style to their curriculum, presenting his methods as a groundbreaking example of values-driven success. The Andrew Meyers Foundation, established with funds from the dealership's growing success, expanded its reach globally. Its mission was to foster leadership grounded in empathy and respect, providing scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources to aspiring leaders from underprivileged backgrounds. The foundation also worked on initiatives to improve workplace cultures, offering training programs for companies and consulting services to help organizations foster environments of inclusion and respect. One particularly noteworthy project of the foundation was a collaboration with international organizations to improve customer service standards across industries. The program, titled Service with Dignity, was based on the core principles Andrew had championed. It emphasized treating every customer, regardless of their background or appearance, with respect and care. Thousands of businesses adopted these principles, and the program became a benchmark for exceptional customer experiences. Meanwhile, the original dealership, now a symbol of Andrew's vision, continued to thrive under Laura's leadership. It became more than just a place to buy cars, it was a community hub, a center for mentorship, and a shining example of what a business could achieve when built on strong values. One day, Laura received a letter from a young entrepreneur named Darius, who ran a small used car dealership in a struggling town. Inspired by Andrew's story, Darius had implemented similar changes in his own business, focusing on respect and kindness as core values. In the letter, he wrote, "I wanted to thank you and Mr. Meyers for showing us that there's another way to succeed, a better way. Since adopting your principles, my dealership has transformed. Customers trust us, employees are happier, and for the first time in years, our business is thriving. I owe it all to the lessons I learned from Andrew Meyers' story." Asterisk. Laura shared the letter with her team, and they decided to reach out to Darius. Together, they organized a partnership program to help other small dealerships adopt similar values-driven practices. This initiative became a movement, bringing Andrew's message to countless businesses and communities across the nation. Back in the town where Andrew's journey began, the original dealership underwent a renovation to mark the 30th anniversary of its transformation. The updates included a new training center named the Meyers Institute for Ethical Leadership, where workshops and seminars were held regularly to train the next generation of leaders. The institute became a hub for sharing best practices and fostering discussions about how to bring empathy and integrity into business practices. At the heart of the dealership, Andrew's corner remained untouched. A testament to the man who had sparked it all. Visitors from far and wide would come to see the plaque and read the quote inscribed on the wall. Many would leave notes, letters, or flowers in honor of Andrew, sharing how his story had touched their lives. One of the most emotional moments in the dealership's history came when a young man named Ethan visited. He had grown up hearing his grandfather's story of being dismissed by salespeople at a car dealership many years ago. Ethan had always wondered what had happened to the elderly man who had faced such indignity. As he read the story displayed in Andrew's corner, tears welled in his eyes. "This was my grandfather," Ethan said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Andrew Meyers was my grandfather." The staff gathered around as Ethan shared memories of Andrew from his childhood. "He never talked much about what he had accomplished here," Ethan said. "He just taught us to treat everyone with respect and to always do the right thing, even when it's hard." I didn't realize how many lives he had touched until today. The dealership honored Ethan with a tour and presented him with a framed photograph of Andrew, along with a special edition of the book written about his journey. Ethan promised to carry forward his grandfather's values, ensuring that the lessons Andrew had imparted would live on in the family for generations. As time went on, the dealership's influence continued to grow, and Andrew Meyer's story became a timeless example of the power of humility and kindness. It was a reminder that even in a world often driven by appearances and profits, there was room for integrity, compassion, and genuine human connection. And so, Andrew's legacy endured, not just in the thriving dealership, the foundation, or the countless lives he had touched, but in the hearts of everyone who believed in the simple, yet profound truth he had always lived by: treat others with respect, and the world will become a better place, one person at a time. Decades after Andrew Meyer's transformative act of kindness and leadership, his influence extended well beyond the dealership and the foundation. His name became a rallying cry for those advocating for change in industries where humanity had been sidelined in favor of profit margins. Andrew's story was no longer just about a dealership, it had become a universal lesson about the power of one individual to create ripple effects that could change the world. The Andrew Myers Institute for Ethical Leadership grew into a renowned global organization. It offered specialized programs for executives, entrepreneurs, and educators, focusing on ethical decision-making and the importance of fostering respect within workplace cultures. Many of the world's most respected business leaders credited their success to lessons learned through the institute. One such leader was Maya Thompson, CEO of a multinational technology company. In a speech delivered at a global summit, Maya recounted how Andrew's story had shaped her leadership approach. "Years ago, I read about Andrew Myers, a man who redefined what it meant to lead with integrity," Maya said. "His principles inspired me to rethink everything about how we treat our employees, customers, and even our competitors. Today, my company thrives not just because of innovation, but because we prioritize people over profit." That lesson came from Andrew Myers. As stories like Maya's emerged, the idea of values-based leadership gained traction across industries. Businesses started incorporating empathy training into their onboarding processes, and customer service roles became more centered on understanding and compassion. Andrew's legacy had turned into a global movement. Back at the dealership, now a cornerstone of the Myers Automotive Network, a new generation of leaders continued to honor Andrew's principles. Laura had since retired, but her protégé, a former intern named Rachel, had taken over as CEO. Rachel had grown up hearing Andrew's story and was determined to preserve the culture of kindness and respect that had made the dealership famous. Rachel's first major initiative as CEO was to launch the Myers Mentorship Program, which paired aspiring young professionals with seasoned leaders across the Myers network. The program didn't just focus on technical skills, it emphasized the importance of emotional intelligence, ethical decision-making, and community impact. One of the program's first ments, a young man named Julian, shared how it changed his life. Coming from a difficult background, Julian had struggled to find direction. But through the mentorship program, he gained confidence and clarity. "Andrew Myers' story gave me hope," Julian said during his graduation from the program. "It showed me that no matter where you start or what challenges you face, you can choose to make a difference." Today, I'm proud to carry forward his legacy by treating others with the respect and dignity they deserve. The dealership itself had become a living museum, showcasing Andrew's journey through interactive exhibits and digital archives. Visitors from around the world came to experience the place where his story began. Families brought their children, educators brought their students, and businesses organized retreats to learn from the example set by Andrew and his team. One of the most popular features was a virtual reality exhibit that recreated Andrew's first visit to the dealership. Visitors could step into his shoes, experiencing the dismissiveness he endured and then witnessing the transformation that followed. The exhibit left many moved to tears, a powerful reminder of how a single moment of humiliation had sparked a revolution of kindness. Meanwhile, the Andrew Myers Foundation continued to expand its efforts, launching initiatives in underserved communities worldwide. One project, Drive for Hope, provided vehicles to families in need, enabling them to access education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. Each car came with a letter sharing Andrew's story, inspiring recipients to pay the kindness forward in their own way. Andrew's family also played a significant role in carrying on his work. His grandson Ethan, now an accomplished leader in his own right, became a prominent advocate for ethical leadership and community building. Speaking at a global leadership summit, Ethan shared a deeply personal reflection. "My grandfather was an ordinary man who made extraordinary choices. He didn't set out to change the world, but he did one person at a time. His legacy reminds us that our actions, no matter how small, can leave a profound impact." Ethan's words resonated with millions, sparking a new wave of interest in Andrew's story. Schools around the world incorporated it into their curricula, teaching students about the importance of empathy, humility, and resilience. Parents used it as a bedtime story, a tale of hope and transformation that inspired children to treat others with kindness. As the years went by, Andrew Meyer's name became synonymous with ethical leadership and the transformative power of respect. His story was told not just in books and documentaries but in conversations around dinner tables, classrooms, and boardrooms. It became a timeless example of how one person's values could inspire a movement that transcended time, geography, and industry. In the original dealership, now known as the Andrew Meyer's Ethical Business Center, a new addition was made, a wall of impact. This wall displayed letters, photographs, and testimonials from people around the world who had been touched by Andrew's legacy. Every week, new entries were added, each one a testament to the lasting influence of his actions. At the center of the wall was a simple but powerful inscription. "Andrew Myers taught us that greatness lies not in wealth or power, but in the way we treat others." His legacy reminds us that kindness is the most enduring success of all. And so, Andrew's story continued to inspire. Long after his time, his values lived on in the countless lives he had touched, proving that one person's actions, guided by integrity and compassion, could truly change the world. As the years stretched into decades, the impact of Andrew Meyer's legacy only deepened, embedding itself into the fabric of society. The Andrew Meyer's Ethical Business Center, now a global institution, became a standard-bearer for values-based education and leadership. Its programs were translated into dozens of languages and implemented in schools, businesses, and communities worldwide. One particularly notable initiative launched by the center was the Global Kindness Challenge, a yearly campaign encouraging individuals and organizations to undertake acts of kindness in their personal and professional lives. Inspired by Andrew's story, participants shared their experiences online, creating a viral wave of positivity that spanned continents. Stories poured in, from small gestures, like helping a neighbor in need, to larger undertakings, such as companies pledging to overhaul their customer service practices. One story stood out that year. A young entrepreneur in a remote village in Kenya started a community transport service after receiving a car through the Drive for Hope program. The entrepreneur named the service Myers Mobility in honor of Andrew, and it quickly became a lifeline for the community, enabling residents to access markets, schools, and healthcare facilities. "This isn't just about transportation," the entrepreneur shared in an interview. "It's about dignity, opportunity, and hope." Andrew Meyer's story reminded me that one act of kindness can set off a chain reaction. That's what we're trying to do here. Back at the Myers Automotive Network, the dealerships continued to thrive under a new generation of leaders. Rachel, now retired, had passed the torch to a dynamic young CEO named Amir Patel. Amir, a graduate of the Andrew Meyer's leadership program, was passionate about maintaining the network's culture of respect and innovation while also exploring new frontiers. Under Amir's leadership, the dealerships adopted cutting-edge technologies to enhance the customer experience. Yet even as they embraced modernization, they held firmly to Andrew's timeless values. Each technological advancement was designed with the customer in mind, ensuring that the human connection remained at the heart of every interaction. Amir also introduced a groundbreaking initiative called Legacy Sessions, where employees gathered monthly to share stories of how Andrew's principles had guided their work. These sessions created a profound sense of unity and purpose, reminding everyone that they were part of something bigger than themselves. One session featured a story from a longtime employee named Maria, who had started as a receptionist decades ago and risen to become a senior manager. "When I first joined, I was just looking for a job," Maria said. "But this place became a home. Andrew Meyer's values shaped not just my career, but my life. I've tried to pass those values on to my children, and I see them carrying that torch in their own ways." The dealership's community-focused programs also expanded under Amir's tenure. A new initiative, Keys to Opportunity, provided cars and financial literacy training to single parents, helping them achieve greater independence and stability. One recipient, a mother of two, shared her heartfelt gratitude in a video testimonial. "This car isn't just a vehicle, it's a second chance," she said. "Because of the generosity of the Myers team and the values they stand for, I can now take my kids to school, get to work on time, and pursue my dreams." Andrew Myers may no longer be with us, but his spirit is alive in everything this dealership does. The Andrew Myers Foundation, too, continued to evolve. In partnership with international organizations, it launched the Kindness in Action Summit, an annual event bringing together thought leaders, activists, and innovators to discuss how Andrew's principles could address global challenges. Topics ranged from ethical AI development to combating discrimination in corporate cultures. At one such summit, Ethan Myers, now a prominent advocate for social change, delivered a keynote speech that left the audience deeply moved. "My grandfather taught me that no act of kindness is ever wasted," Ethan said. "It's a ripple that travels further than we can imagine, touching lives in ways we'll never fully know. That's the legacy we're here to continue, not just for him, but for all of us." The summit concluded with a powerful moment, a video compilation of letters and messages from people whose lives had been touched by Andrew's legacy. From farmers in rural communities to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, the stories shared a common thread: the transformative power of respect and kindness. In the original dealership, now a historical landmark, visitors continued to flock to see where it all began. The Wall of Impact had grown into a vast digital archive, accessible worldwide, documenting thousands of stories inspired by Andrew's example. People left notes of gratitude, sharing how his values had influenced their lives. One visitor, a young girl named Lily, walked through the dealership with her parents. Her class had recently studied Andrew's story, and she was eager to see the place she'd read about. Standing before the plaque in Andrew's corner, she turned to her parents and said, "When I grow up, I want to be like him. I want to make people feel special." Andrew's legacy lived on in moments like these, in the hearts of children, the actions of leaders, and the communities transformed by his values. His story had become a timeless reminder that greatness wasn't about wealth or status, it was about how you treated others and the difference you made in their lives. And so, as the decades rolled on, Andrew Myers' name remained a symbol of hope, compassion, and unwavering integrity, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The legacy of Andrew Myers took on a life of its own, transcending generations and becoming a global philosophy for living and leading. The Andrew Myers Institute, now recognized as one of the most prestigious ethical leadership organizations in the world, had expanded its reach to include partnerships with governments, nonprofits, and businesses spanning every continent. Its core principle, kindness is the foundation of greatness, became a guiding mantra in boardrooms, classrooms, and communities alike. The Wall of Impact, now a digital and physical archive housed at the Andrew Myers Ethical Business Center, had grown into an international project. People from over 100 countries submitted their stories, sharing how Andrew's values had inspired them to change their workplaces, families, and neighborhoods. Some of these accounts became viral sensations, showcasing the universality of Andrew's belief in kindness and respect. One story from the wall stood out. A teacher in a remote village in Peru had used Andrew's story to teach her students about perseverance and empathy. Inspired by his tale, the children initiated a project to help their neighbors repair their homes after a devastating flood. Their small acts of kindness created a domino effect, rallying the entire village and drawing support from surrounding communities. Another entry came from a former corporate executive in New York who left his high-powered job to start a nonprofit focused on ethical business practices. "Andrew Myers taught me that success isn't measured by the size of your paycheck but by the size of your heart," he wrote. "His story gave me the courage to follow my true calling." At the dealership network, now a thriving international enterprise, Andrew's principles continue to drive innovation and community impact. The Myers Mobility Initiative, a program providing affordable transportation solutions to underserved communities, expanded globally. It introduced electric and hybrid vehicles to regions where access to sustainable transportation was previously unheard of, making Andrew's vision part of the fight against climate change. One of the initiative's leaders, a young woman named Amina from Nigeria, shared her experience at a global leadership forum. "Growing up, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to make a difference on this scale," she said. Andrew Meyer's legacy showed me that every person has the power to create change. Now, I'm proud to be part of a movement that's transforming lives. The dealership's customer-first culture remained its cornerstone. Employees were trained not only in technical skills but also in emotional intelligence and empathy. Customer reviews often highlighted the exceptional service and personal care that had become synonymous with the Myers name. One review, written by a loyal customer, encapsulated the sentiment shared by many. "I came here to buy a car, but I left with something far more valuable, a reminder that kindness and respect still exist in this world. Every interaction felt genuine, every promise kept." Andrew Meyer's spirit lives on in every person here. Meanwhile, the Andrew Meyers Foundation reached new heights, launching global campaigns focused on education, sustainable development, and social equity. One of its most impactful programs, Voices of Tomorrow, empowered youth from marginalized communities to become leaders and changemakers. Scholarships, leadership workshops, and mentorship opportunities ensured that thousands of young people could pursue their dreams while carrying forward Andrew's ideals. Ethan Myers, Andrew's grandson, continued to be a prominent figure in these efforts. His speeches and advocacy drew millions of followers, particularly among younger generations who saw him as a torchbearer for Andrew's vision. Ethan often reminded audiences that the real power of Andrew's story wasn't in the wealth he'd accumulated or the business he'd built, it was in the lives he'd touched. "My grandfather's greatest lesson," Ethan said at a packed auditorium during the Global Kindness Summit, "is that every moment is an opportunity to choose kindness. Whether it's how you treat a stranger, a colleague, or even yourself, those choices define your legacy. And the beautiful thing about kindness is that it multiplies. One act inspires another, and another, until the world becomes a better place." As Ethan's words echoed through the hall, the audience rose in a standing ovation, a testament to the enduring power of Andrew's message. In the original dealership, now a global headquarters for the Myers network, visitors continued to gather to honor the man who had started it all. A new exhibit was unveiled, titled The Journey of Change, featuring an interactive timeline of Andrew's life and the ripple effects of his actions. The exhibit included personal artifacts, such as Andrew's worn coat and the keys to the old sedan he'd driven when he first walked into the dealership. At the heart of the exhibit was a multimedia installation that allowed visitors to contribute their own stories of how they had been inspired by Andrew's legacy. The installation became a powerful reminder that his story was no longer just his, it belonged to everyone who believed in the power of kindness. One evening, as the sun set over the bustling headquarters, a group of employees gathered in the showroom to share reflections on Andrew's impact. Among them was a young intern named Sophie, who had recently joined the team. She spoke softly, but her words carried profound weight. "I never met Andrew Meyers," she said, "but I feel like I know him. I see him in the way my colleagues treat each other, in the stories I've heard from customers, and in the values this place stands for. He's not just a name on a plaque, he's a part of all of us." Her words were met with quiet nods and smiles, a shared acknowledgement that Andrew's legacy was alive in every act of kindness, every moment of respect, and every choice to lead with integrity. As the decades rolled on, Andrew's story continued to inspire new generations. It became a universal symbol of hope, reminding people that true greatness wasn't about power or prestige, it was about the simple, profound act of treating others with dignity. And so, Andrew Meyers' legacy endured, a shining light in an often chaotic world. His life proved that one person, armed with compassion and unwavering principles, could change not just a business or a community, but the very way people chose to live and lead. As the years passed, the influence of Andrew Meyers' legacy continued to grow, weaving itself into the fabric of society in ways no one could have predicted. The principles he championed, respect, humility, kindness, and integrity, remain timeless, inspiring individuals, communities, and businesses alike to adopt these values as the foundation of their own success. His story became a blueprint for ethical leadership and personal growth, passed down from one generation to the next. The Andrew Meyers Ethical Business Center became a global hub for leadership development, with branches in major cities around the world. It offered programs not just for business professionals but also for governments, schools, and nonprofits, all focused on creating environments where people could thrive through mutual respect and understanding. The Meyers Leadership Fellowship became one of the most prestigious awards for young leaders, recognizing individuals who embodied Andrew's values in their work and communities. One of the most inspiring success stories came from a young woman named Isla, who grew up in a war-torn region and faced immense challenges in her youth. After participating in the Andrew Myers Leadership Program, Isla returned to her home country and founded an organization dedicated to rebuilding communities through education, dialogue, and support for women and children. Her efforts were recognized globally, and she often credited Andrew's story for helping her believe that change was possible, no matter the circumstances. Andrew's life was a testament to the power of small actions, Isla said in an interview. I learned that no matter where we are, we can choose kindness. His example taught me to keep moving forward with integrity, and that's what I do every day. Across the world, Andrew's philosophy was becoming a guiding principle in many industries. Corporate social responsibility took on a new meaning, as companies adopted the idea that success wasn't just about profits but about making a positive impact on society. Business leaders who followed Andrew's teachings became known not only for their financial success but for their commitment to creating workplaces where employees were valued as much as customers. Even in the entertainment industry, where image and status often took precedence, Andrew's influence began to shine through. Filmmakers, actors, and artists used their platforms to promote kindness and respect. Documentaries and feature films about Andrew's life were produced, sharing his incredible journey with a wider audience, inspiring those in creative fields to adopt similar values in their work. The Andrew Myers Foundation expanded its outreach efforts, focusing on social and environmental issues. Programs like Building Bridges, which aim to foster understanding between different cultural and social groups, gained widespread support. Through storytelling, community workshops, and cultural exchange initiatives, the foundation was instrumental in breaking down barriers and building connections across divides. The Myers Mobility Program continued to provide transportation to those in need, and its impact grew exponentially. In rural areas of Southeast Asia, Central America, and parts of Africa, cars were provided to entrepreneurs, farmers, and community leaders who otherwise wouldn't have had access to reliable transportation. These individuals used their vehicles to improve their livelihoods, transport goods, and deliver healthcare and education to remote regions. As part of the program, the foundation also began to support the development of sustainable transportation solutions. Electric vehicles became a focus, and partnerships with renewable energy companies allowed the program to expand its environmental impact while helping individuals who were previously excluded from the benefits of modern transportation. In the Myers Leadership Institute, the stories of those whose lives had been changed by Andrew's work were showcased. One particular story stood out, a letter from a former student who had graduated from a small community college and went on to become a senior manager at a Fortune 500 company. It's amazing to think that just a few years ago, I didn't know how to find my own voice, the letter read. Andrew Myers taught me the importance of speaking up with kindness and leading by example. Every day, I think about the lessons I learned and apply them to my work. I feel proud to be part of a larger legacy, one that encourages people to make a difference. The impact of Andrew's example extended into the political arena as well. Politicians who followed his teachings worked toward policies that promoted social equity, fair wages, and responsible governance. His principles were included in discussions on reforming systems of inequality and making institutions more transparent and accountable. In a series of global summits on ethical governance, one prominent leader stood before an international audience and shared how Andrew's teachings had shaped his approach to leadership. Andrew taught us that politics is not just about power, it's about service, he said. It's about serving the people, regardless of their background or status, and ensuring that the decisions we make elevate humanity. While the scope of Andrew's influence reached far and wide, his family remained at the heart of the movement. Ethan, Andrew's grandson, became the official spokesperson for the foundation and led many of the global initiatives. Despite the enormous impact he had in spreading his grandfather's message, Ethan remained grounded in the same values Andrew had instilled in him. At one of the foundation's major conferences, Ethan spoke about the lessons his grandfather taught him. What I remember most about my grandfather is how he treated people, no matter who they were. He didn't care if you were rich or poor, famous or unknown. He saw the humanity in everyone, and that's something I strive to do every day, Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion. This legacy is about all of us coming together, no matter where we are, and creating a world that's based on kindness. As the foundation's work continued to expand, Ethan was approached by a number of international organizations asking for guidance on leadership ethics. His focus remained on empowering the next generation of leaders, ensuring that the principles of respect and empathy were ingrained in every aspect of their work. Andrew's story had gone from that of an individual who was mocked and overlooked to that of a global icon for ethical leadership. His journey had shown that true leadership was not about dominating others but about uplifting them. His ability to see the potential in others, to lead with quiet confidence and empathy, had touched lives in a way few could have imagined. Years after his passing, his name continued to inspire change around the world. A statue of Andrew was unveiled in the heart of the city where he had made his first visit to the dealership, his quiet demeanor and dignified stance captured in bronze. The plaque beneath the statue read, "In honor of Andrew Myers, a man who showed us that leadership begins with kindness, that respect is the foundation of success, and that one person, with integrity, can change the world." And so, Andrew's legacy lived on not just in his family, his business, or his foundation, but in the hearts and minds of all those who had been touched by his life. His journey proved that greatness could be achieved not through fame or wealth, but through the simple yet profound act of treating others with dignity and respect. His story became a symbol of hope and inspiration for anyone seeking to make a positive difference in the world. Through his life, Andrew Myers had given the world the greatest gift of all, the belief that kindness could be the force that shapes a better tomorrow. As Andrew Myers' legacy continued to ripple through the world, its impact reached new heights. The Andrew Myers Foundation initiated global campaigns tackling some of the world's most pressing issues, from climate change to poverty alleviation. They introduced programs focused on sustainable development, particularly in underserved regions. Andrew's principles were woven into the heart of these initiatives, underscoring the importance of equity, human dignity, and long-term sustainability. One of the most groundbreaking projects to emerge was the Global Empowerment Network, which connected organizations, businesses, and individuals committed to creating positive social change. The network acted as a platform for collaboration, where people could share resources, strategies, and success stories in their efforts to build more inclusive, equitable communities. The network quickly grew to encompass hundreds of groups across the globe, from grassroots organizations to multinational corporations. These collaborators worked together to address issues like access to clean water, education, and healthcare. The collective spirit of the network embodied Andrew's vision of interconnectedness, reminding people that everyone, regardless of their background or resources, had the power to contribute meaningfully to the world's progress. One particularly inspiring project within the network was Education for All, a global initiative aimed at providing free, high-quality education to children in conflict zones and impoverished areas. Schools were built, teachers trained, and educational materials delivered to remote regions where education had previously been inaccessible. The project was fueled by donations, corporate sponsorships, and a global volunteer force, all inspired by Andrew's vision of equal opportunity for all. As the work of the Global Empowerment Network grew, stories emerged from across the world about how Andrew's philosophy was shaping local communities. One such story came from a village in India, where the initiative brought education, healthcare, and renewable energy solutions. The village's transformation became a beacon of hope, with its residents sharing how Andrew's emphasis on respect and kindness had inspired them to work together for a better future. Local leaders, who had once struggled with division and conflict, came together, forming a united front to tackle community challenges. Andrew Myers showed us the power of small acts of kindness, one community leader remarked. It wasn't just about what we were doing, but about how we were doing it together. The Andrew Myers Institute for Ethical Business became an institution that continued to shape future leaders, with its graduates holding key positions in corporations, governments, and nonprofit organizations worldwide. Each year, the Institute awarded its Andrew Myers Global Leadership Prize, which recognized individuals whose actions embodied Andrew's vision of ethical, people-centered leadership. The prize became a prestigious honor, given not just for professional achievements but for the positive social impact that recipients had made in their communities. One of the early winners was a woman named Dr. Miriam Parsa, a doctor who had devoted her life to providing healthcare in war-torn regions of the Middle East. Dr. Parsa's efforts to save lives, provide medical supplies, and train local healthcare professionals exemplified Andrew's values. In her acceptance speech, she spoke movingly about how Andrew's story had inspired her to dedicate her life to service. Andrew's legacy, Dr. Parsa said, taught me that leadership is about compassion. It's not just about saving lives, but about making sure people feel seen, heard, and respected. That is what real change is, transforming lives from the inside out. With the expansion of the Institute and the Foundation's ongoing projects, a new generation of leaders emerged, each more determined to carry Andrew's legacy forward. Through mentorship, workshops, and collaborative projects, these leaders learned to navigate the challenges of the modern world while staying grounded in the values of integrity, kindness, and respect. The Andrew Myers Global Leadership Network was also launched, providing a platform for young professionals and entrepreneurs to connect with mentors and business leaders who shared Andrew's philosophy. Through this network, countless individuals gained access to resources, opportunities, and the knowledge they needed to make their own positive impact. One young entrepreneur, Isla from Brazil, credited the network for helping her launch a sustainable fashion brand focused on fair trade practices. Through the mentorship I received from the network, I learned that success isn't about cutting corners or exploiting people, it's about creating value that benefits everyone. Andrew's story taught me that leadership is about lifting others up, not pulling them down. That's the kind of leader I want to be. In the original dealership, now a symbol of Andrew's lifelong commitment to kindness and respect, a new generation of staff continued to uphold the values he instilled. The Andrew Myers Customer Experience Program was implemented at every branch in the network, focusing on creating the most exceptional, personalized experience for every customer, no matter their background. This program included a focus on listening deeply to customers' needs, treating them with empathy, and ensuring that every interaction was rooted in respect. The Myers Family Foundation, led by Ethan and his children, also played a key role in preserving Andrew's memory. It organized annual Myers Leadership Conferences, which brought together leaders from various sectors to discuss new ways to integrate Andrew's principles into everyday business and personal practices. These conferences became a platform for thought leaders to challenge one another to do better and rethink traditional models of leadership, always prioritizing people over profits. The Myers family home, where Andrew had lived a quiet life before his transformation into a business icon, became a retreat and training center. Known as the Myers Center for Ethical Leadership, it offered immersive programs designed to help leaders rediscover their sense of purpose and reconnect with the core values that had guided Andrew's journey. As the foundation grew, it focused on expanding its outreach, bringing together people from all walks of life to contribute to a global dialogue about the importance of kindness and respect in business and society. Local community events, such as Kindness Days and Respect Weeks, became common, with millions of participants celebrating and practicing Andrew's values. In the twilight years of his life, Andrew never could have predicted that his simple choice to approach a car dealership one fateful day would lead to a worldwide movement. He hadn't set out to change the world, he only sought to make it a better place by acting with integrity and compassion. But that singular act of kindness sparked an ongoing legacy that would outlive him, leaving an indelible mark on the world. And so, Andrew Myers became not just a figure in business but a symbol of the power of everyday actions. His life proved that one individual's choice to lead with respect and humility could change not only an industry but also the world. His story was a beacon for anyone who believed that small acts of kindness, when multiplied, could lead to monumental change. Decades after his passing, his name continued to be spoken with reverence. He was remembered not for his wealth or fame, but for his unwavering commitment to treating others with dignity and respect. The legacy of Andrew Myers lived on in every leader who embraced his principles, in every community that had been transformed by his vision, and in the countless acts of kindness that were inspired by his example. As the world continued to embrace Andrew Myers' philosophy, new chapters were written in the story of his extraordinary legacy. The Andrew Myers Leadership Fellowship grew into an iconic program for fostering ethical leaders, attracting participants from all over the world. Young leaders, chosen for their potential to make a meaningful difference in their communities, received scholarships, mentorship, and access to the best practices in ethical leadership. These fellows, as they were called, worked on projects that had lasting social impact. Many launched startups focused on sustainability, social justice, and community well-being. One fellow, a woman named Lila from South Africa, developed a mobile app that connected local farmers to larger markets, helping them overcome barriers to entry. By embracing Andrew's principles of respect and fairness, Lila's app revolutionized the agricultural economy in rural areas. Andrew's teachings about respect for all people, no matter their status, inspired me to create an app that empowers the small farmer, Lila said at a fellowship gathering. It's about leveling the playing field, giving everyone a fair chance to succeed, and ensuring that even the smallest voices are heard. Another fellow, Marcus from the United States, used his leadership training to push for more equitable education policies in underfunded school districts. Marcus had grown up in one of these districts and understood the struggles faced by students who lacked access to resources. His work led to the implementation of a nationwide policy that allowed for more funding and resources to flow into communities where children faced the greatest challenges. As Marcus reflected on his journey, he often spoke about the influence of Andrew's life on his decisions. Andrew Myers proved that leadership isn't just about what you can take from the world, it's about what you give back. He showed me that the greatest leaders are those who inspire others to rise to their potential, and that's what I've tried to do with the work I do. In parallel with the Leadership Fellowship, Andrew's legacy was being celebrated in academic institutions across the world. The Andrew Myers Chair in Ethical Business Leadership was established at universities in Europe, the Americas, and Asia, allowing students to pursue advanced degrees in business ethics and social entrepreneurship. Faculty members, many of whom had studied Andrew's approach to leadership, shaped the next generation of students, teaching them that business success was inextricably linked to the well-being of people and communities. The Andrew Myers Business Ethics Journal became one of the leading academic publications in the field, focusing on case studies, research, and real-world examples of businesses that had successfully integrated ethical practices. The journal was widely respected in academic and business circles, as it showcased the tangible impact of values-driven leadership on companies' long-term success. The Myers Institute for Global Change, which had grown into a flagship institution for global leaders, played an instrumental role in navigating the complex issues of the 21st century. The institute organized high-level summits and conferences that brought together heads of state, corporate leaders, activists, and academics to discuss ways to tackle issues like climate change, inequality, and human rights violations. The institute's approach to problem-solving was grounded in Andrew's commitment to listening to every voice, no matter how small, and making decisions that prioritized the well-being of people and the planet. One such summit, held in 2040, brought together global leaders to discuss solutions for the global refugee crisis. The discussions, shaped by Andrew's philosophy, were groundbreaking. Unlike traditional negotiations, the summit included not just political leaders but also refugees themselves, who shared their stories and ideas on how to create a more inclusive and compassionate world. By empowering those affected most by the issues, the summit produced solutions that were not only practical but deeply empathetic and community-centered. A key moment in that summit occurred when a young refugee leader from Syria spoke about the importance of dignity and respect in resettlement programs. "When we are treated as equals, as people of worth, we thrive," she said. Andrew Myers believed that every person deserves respect, no matter their circumstances. That's the foundation on which we should build our solutions for the refugee crisis. In response, one of the world's leading political figures, who had been part of the summit, committed to a new policy that put human dignity at the center of refugee resettlement efforts worldwide. The result was a global initiative that ensured refugees not only had access to food and shelter but also to education, healthcare, and opportunities for integration into new societies. Across the globe, the Myers Impact Fund continued to grow, enabling thousands of small-scale social entrepreneurs to launch projects that made a real difference in their communities. The fund prioritized ventures that focused on sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, clean water access, and affordable healthcare. By offering financial support, mentorship, and access to global networks, the Myers Impact Fund empowered individuals to transform their local economies while promoting ethical practices that benefited the environment and society as a whole. One of the most inspiring success stories from the fund was a social enterprise in Latin America that used the resources to build affordable, eco-friendly housing for low-income families. This initiative, called Hope Homes, didn't just provide shelter. It gave families the chance to own their homes and live in an environmentally sustainable way. Over the course of the next decade, Hope Homes expanded into multiple countries, providing homes to thousands of families who had previously lived in substandard conditions. As the work of the foundation, the institute, and the network grew, Andrew Myers' story continued to inspire new generations. His name was synonymous with ethical leadership, compassion, and the idea that true success was measured by the positive impact one had on others. The world, once filled with divisions, was slowly becoming a more connected and empathetic place. One of the most powerful ways Andrew's legacy lived on was through the countless individual stories shared at community gatherings, global conferences, and through the networks he helped build. Every person whose life was touched by his story had their own story of transformation, whether it was a customer whose life was made easier by a respectful interaction at a dealership, a leader who shifted their approach to business based on Andrew's teachings, or a child whose dreams were nurtured through the Myers Leadership Fellowship. In one final gesture to honor Andrew's life and work, a global day of respect and kindness was established, celebrated on the anniversary of his first visit to the dealership. On this day, people around the world took time to perform acts of kindness, from helping a neighbor to starting a community project. Schools held special assemblies, companies took the day off to volunteer, and leaders from all walks of life shared messages about the importance of treating others with dignity. As the world commemorated the Global Day of Respect and Kindness, it became clear that Andrew Myers had not only created a movement but had shaped an entire generation's understanding of what it meant to be a leader. His commitment to treating others with respect, to leading with humility, and to building a world where kindness was the foundation of success, had forever changed the course of history. Andrew Myers, the quiet man who once walked into a dealership looking for a car, had left a legacy that reached beyond borders, beyond industries, and beyond time itself, a legacy that proved that one individual's choice to live with integrity and kindness could indeed change the world. As the Global Day of Respect and Kindness continued to gain momentum, the world began to witness profound shifts in how people interacted with one another. What started as a single initiative in honor of Andrew Myers evolved into a worldwide movement that transcended boundaries, cultures, and professions. This day became more than just a celebration, it was a global reminder of the importance of empathy, connection, and shared responsibility for one another's well-being. The Myers Institute for Global Change hosted an annual summit on this day, where leaders from various sectors gathered to discuss how kindness could be integrated into policymaking, corporate governance, and social entrepreneurship. At the summit, one of the most anticipated discussions revolved around the growing trend of corporate social responsibility, CSR. Companies that had long been seen as profit-driven institutions were now making substantial strides in committing to social and environmental causes. Many of these businesses credited Andrew's philosophy of ethical leadership as the catalyst for their shift toward a more human-centered approach to commerce. A major corporation, known for its global supply chain, shared how it had completely overhauled its practices to prioritize the welfare of workers in developing countries. Their Fair Labor Initiative, a program inspired by Andrew's principles, guaranteed fair wages, safe working conditions, and access to healthcare for all employees. Andrew taught us that businesses don't just exist to profit, they exist to make the world a better place, the CEO said during a panel discussion. By aligning our business with values of respect and fairness, we've seen growth that aligns with the common good, not just our bottom line. As more organizations adopted values-driven practices, the Andrew Myers Ethical Leadership Network expanded. It became a global alliance of companies, governments, and non-profit organizations committed to driving social change through kindness, respect, and sustainable practices. The network developed a framework for companies to measure the social impact of their actions, providing them with the tools to hold themselves accountable for their role in improving society. The Myers Leadership Fellows became recognized globally for their contributions to the betterment of society. One fellow, Priya from India, started a campaign that advocated for women's rights and equality in education. With Andrew's teachings as the backbone of her efforts, Priya not only led nationwide campaigns but also lobbied for the passing of laws that granted women equal access to education and employment opportunities. Andrew's story taught me that leadership isn't about power, it's about service, Priya said during a keynote speech. I'm here because of the strength of his vision. Around the world, the Myers Leadership Program helped raise future generations of ethical leaders. Universities across the globe launched scholarship programs in Andrew's name, granting financial aid to students pursuing degrees in fields like social entrepreneurship, environmental sustainability, and community development. The students often cited Andrew's legacy as a central influence on their career choices, and many went on to create impactful projects in their communities, focusing on issues like poverty alleviation, clean energy, and human rights. One of the most remarkable success stories came from a Myers fellow named Ahmed, who used his education and leadership training to establish a social enterprise aimed at providing clean, renewable energy solutions to rural communities in sub-Saharan Africa. His company, Solarize, develops solar-powered systems for homes, schools, and health centers in remote villages. By the end of the decade, Solarize had provided electricity to thousands of families, improving their access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. What drives me, Ahmed said in a documentary about his work, is not just the technology but the idea that every person deserves a fair shot at a better life. Andrew Myers taught me that businesses should solve problems, not create them. His philosophy of respect for all people is what guides me every day. Even as the world saw rapid technological advancements, such as artificial intelligence and automation, Andrew's legacy remained a guiding force. The Myers Institute for Global Change held a series of forums discussing how these technologies could be harnessed in ways that respected human dignity and enhanced collective well-being. These discussions centered around creating ethical AI and ensuring that the future of technology would benefit society as a whole, rather than concentrating power in the hands of a few. For example, AI for Good, a global initiative launched by the Institute, promoted the development of AI solutions that focused on solving issues like climate change, global health crises, and humanitarian relief. As AI systems became increasingly integrated into industries, Andrew's emphasis on accountability and respect for people's rights served as a foundational element in ensuring that these technologies would not exploit or harm vulnerable populations. Through the Myers Foundation, one of the most important projects to emerge in recent years was the Global Kindness Curriculum, a comprehensive educational program developed for schools around the world. The curriculum, aimed at children from early education to university levels, taught empathy, kindness, conflict resolution, and ethical decision-making. As the curriculum gained traction, governments, school boards, and universities adopted it as a core component of their educational programs. As part of the program, students were encouraged to engage in local service projects, learning firsthand the power of kindness and the importance of community. By the time the program had expanded globally, it was credited with creating a generation of young people who were deeply committed to social justice, environmental sustainability, and humanitarian causes. In addition to the curriculum, the Global Day of Respect and Kindness also spurred a movement in the arts. Musicians, writers, filmmakers, and visual artists embraced the themes of empathy, human connection, and social responsibility in their work. Documentaries were produced about the Andrew Myers story, chronicling his journey from a humble man to a global icon for ethical leadership. These films captured the transformative power of kindness and highlighted the real-world impact of Andrew's principles, inspiring millions of people to live with greater compassion. As the Andrew Myers Institute for Global Change grew in prominence, it hosted an annual Global Kindness Award, recognizing individuals and organizations whose work had made a significant difference in the world through acts of kindness, respect, and sustainable practices. Each year, the awards ceremony attracted a diverse array of leaders, activists, and philanthropists. One of the most memorable recipients was a small, grassroots organization that had provided clean water to over 50,000 people in remote regions of Southeast Asia. Their efforts were a testament to the power of local action and the ripple effect of kindness. The organization's leader, a woman named Arya, accepted the award on behalf of her team. "We believe that no one should ever have to choose between clean water and a future," Arya said during her acceptance speech. "Our work is about dignity. It's about giving people the chance to thrive and to know that they are seen and valued." Through all these initiatives, the Myers family remained actively involved in carrying forward Andrew's work. Ethan, now an elder statesman in the movement, continued to share his grandfather's story, ensuring that his legacy was not just preserved but expanded. He often spoke to young leaders, reminding them that true success comes not from material wealth or accolades but from the positive impact you have on the world and the people around you. As Ethan prepared for his own retirement, he began to hand over the reins of the foundation to a new generation of leaders who had been shaped by Andrew's teachings. At the Global Leadership Summit, where the passing of the torch was symbolized through a heartfelt ceremony, Ethan shared one final message. "My grandfather always said that leadership is a responsibility, not a privilege. It's about service, not status." His work was never about himself, it was about others. And I know that as we move forward, we carry that same responsibility to continue shaping a world where kindness is the rule, not the exception. In the years following, Andrew's name continued to be synonymous with ethical leadership and human-centered progress. His story remained a beacon of hope, a reminder that small acts of kindness could grow into a global movement. His legacy lived on in the countless individuals who embraced his philosophy and carried it forward, ensuring that Andrew Meyer's vision for a kinder, more respectful world would endure for generations to come.